And I want to welcome you all again for our 6th class of the Introduction to Buddhism course, and this will also be the last class of this series.
I love these.
Thank you.
Gonna miss them.
So our topic today is Buddhism and social action. The reason that we chose this topic today is to kind of, as a kind of balancing act, that we have been learning all basic doctrines in Buddhism, which are more geared to explanation of our human mind, explanation about deep, more on how we can grow, how we can progress, and working of the mind. So sometimes people may get an idea whether whether Buddhism is only talking about mind, whether it has any social relevance, or whether is there teachings that are related to our social relationships and welfare. So in order to balance that idea, and we have chosen this because there are a lot of teachings of the Buddha which has relevance to our social life too. And on the other hand, the way that Buddhism is presented to the Western countries particularly is through meditation. So people may think that Buddhism is only meditation, but there are many other important teachings that help us to develop our social relationships and social progress. So therefore, that is why we chose this lesson today. So the objectives of our lesson is to identify social relevance of basic Buddhist teachings that we learned so far, to see the social relevance of those early teachings, and also to define a social karma. And then lastly, to explain the main characteristics of a good society in Buddhist sense. What are the main features in a good society? So our lesson plan today is, as usual, I will give you a 20-minute summary of the lesson based on the readings that you have, and I will also add certain things that I think that are interesting, that are relevant to our topic. And then we will review the answers that you provided, and also we take some time to review comments some of you have made here about the readings, and then we will have open discussion. Okay, that's our plan. Coming to the first theme, understanding the social relevance of basic Buddhist teachings. So we learn 5 Lugates. We learn doctrine of dependent origination. We learn 4 Noble Truths, and we learn doctrine of karma. And all these teachings, all these teachings give present us a worldview, how the world operates, so to speak. So if you really reflect back on these basic teachings, one thing that is coming out of all these teachings is that what we really saw in those teachings is that the individual people, individual beings, are responsible for many things, and those teachings do not suggest an overarching plan or intelligent design, or even in a, like let's say, Marxist sense, like gradual evolution of society. There's no such concept deriving from those early teachings. Although what all these early teachings is saying that everything is in the making. Causes and conditions are interacting each other, and the who we are today is largely based on what we have done so far, and this is also not a permanent state, and based on what we are doing right now will be our future, right? And all those things teach us that like absence of overarching invisible design that we somehow simply following without our knowing. There is no such notion that is deriving from the early teachings of the Buddha. Therefore, what it's really saying is a very serious thing, that our action do matter. We are not simply part of a bigger, larger plan that somehow automatically move in a certain direction. Our action decides what's going to happen next. So our action really matter, and our actions, our decision really change the reality next moment and tomorrow. And therefore we are actually in the process of making our world and reality. Therefore those teachings encourage us to act. And that is the main social relevance that I would like to emphasize. And then we know that we talk about Four Noble Truths and problems of suffering. And as you know, we learn the problem on the root causes of suffering. And there could be many other contribution conditions for our experience of suffering or dissatisfaction. But the root causes of suffering is psychological. It's psychological. It's not external cause that is somehow making this experience happening. The causes are psychological, and those causes are also the causes for a lot of social problems and evils, or if you want to use the word, troubles. And it's not something invisible. It's not something out of our control. And these root causes are something we can experience and can be handled. So even that emphasis on root causes encourage us to do something, encourage us to act, encourage us to take a social, individual or social action. So we cannot wait for somebody else to solve these things. We have to really take a position and act. And then Noble Eightfold Path, the fourth Noble Truth. It's all Eightfold Paths the Buddhist practice generally, and each path has each item of the path has a social relevance. But I will emphasize right livelihood. And of course, right speech, right actions, everything is social, right? And we speak with others and we act in a social context. But particularly right livelihood, because the Buddha considered the livelihood as so important that he included in as an item of Eightfold Path, because it's so important in the spiritual practice. So right livelihood is defined in Buddhism, and basically there are three principles that governs right livelihood in Buddhism. One is honesty. And what you find is direct quotations, from the text. One is honesty, another one is non-violence or non-harming, and third one is actually relying on one's own effort or one's own sweat and effort. So we see here in the book this defining right livelihood in a way of explaining what is not right livelihood, trades in weapons, in smuggling human beings, and trade in flesh or trade in intoxicants or trade in poison. And also we can find a series of things that trickery, cajolery, insinuating, dissembling, all difficult word, but all refers to deception. And then this is an important definition. The wealth a householder is in possession of obtained by work, zeal, collected by the strength of his arm, by the set of his brow, justly acquired by right means. So the right livelihood is actually really exerting amount of energy from your body or mind, from your labor, in your body labor or your mental labor, exerting the equal amount of energy to the society and then getting equal amount of wealth or benefit. It has to be balanced. It's not really putting little bit of labor and you get so much of money. That is according to Buddhism not right livelihood. So it should be really something that you really deserve by exerting your physical or mental labor, and it should be earned with the strength of your arm, so to speak, and also with your sweat, and justly acquired. So these are related to our social action, our social responsibility, so it has a social relevance too. So important concept that is found in your readings is the idea of social karma. I think I remember Dan has a question about social karma. I will come to that in our discussion. But let's understand what social karma means. We know that when we discuss about karma, it's the volitional actions and each individual is doing. I remember Mark referred to social karma when we talk about flying, right, last session. So social karma simply means the common factor of individual karma. As a society, we do actions not always alone, but sometimes we do actions collectively. And also we have our personal conditioning, like personal habits and patterns that we have developed, and we also have like patterns that is common to a particular society or culture. And sometimes we learn those patterns from culture, and then we also contribute from our part to develop either strengthen those patterns or to teach another pattern. So the collective tendencies of a given society is called social karma, or the collective conditional behavior, the common factor in individual behaviors, individual tendencies to behave. So that is called social karma. So the individual is conditioned by social karma, and also individual also in turn contribute to the social karma. So we are not simply victims all the time. We are conditioned by them, but still we have a choice whether to follow it, whether to help to promote it, or whether to help to not to follow it, or help to even change that karma. So when we do collective karmas, like we can do things together. Like we can work together as an organization, as a group of people, and we can help somebody. Right? And we can, as a group, we can help somebody. So we may have done individual karma by, the way we connect to that action in an individual way, but that karma also has a common factor that we all did a good karma. And we can do a bad thing also. We can get together and plan and do harm, and harm somebody. And then in that case, we have collective karma. So the karma has that social aspect too. Definitely, karma is always done in a social context. In most cases, of course, you can do by yourself too, but in most cases, expressed and done in social context, and the other parties are involved too. If you give something, then you are giving to somebody else. If you harm somebody, you will harm somebody else, and that person also reacts. So karma always develop in a very multifaceted relationships. It's always relationships. Then this article also talks about idea of a good society. So let's try to understand in ideal, what is the ideal for a good society in the Buddhist teachings. So one important character will be like helping each other to overcome ego-centeredness, and that is the whole idea of sangha, as a spiritual community practicing together, and not simply to overcome our mundane problems, but also to help each other to overcome ego-centeredness, which is the root cause of many of the problems. And of course, that also related to dana, which is generosity, sharing, and giving up. And of course, balance between material and spiritual wealth, and simplicity, like contentment, using basic, try to understand what really needs are, and then try to avoid unnecessary wants, and of course, non-violence. And this will be like main characteristics. But I also like to emphasize certain few other teachings which are not found in the readings. And there's a very important discourse from the Buddha, where Buddha discuss about different types of relationships in society. And actually, this is referring to there was a practice of worshiping 6 directions at the time of the Buddha. People will wake up in the morning and will get washed, and they will worship 6 directions as a way of for starting a good day, as a way of inviting good luck. And Buddha saw this practice, and then reinterpret the whole practice in a completely different way, giving a very social interpretation of these 6 directions. So the Buddha advised that 6 directions are not really space or direction. 6 directions are actually 6 types of people who are related to our life. So worshiping these 6 directions in real sense should be developing a good relationship among these 6 groups of people. They are parents in the each directions, and like in that way teachers, and spouse, friends, employer, and clergy. And I don't have time to go into detail, but each relationship has a particular set of duties that each parties should fulfill as a way of improving the relationships. So Buddha was talking about how a parent children should interact, a teacher student should interact, wife husband should interact. It's very interesting. It's fun to read, and how what kind of deep understanding that Buddha had about husband and wife relationship, and also friends relationship, particularly employee and employee relationship, and also clergy and lay relationships. So there are teachings if you are interested to learn. And also there are principles of Buddhist polity. And Buddhism always was connected to kings and royalty, particularly in the pre-modern era, and the kingship, or whoever the rulers has so much power. Without rulers you cannot do anything. So Buddhists somehow were able to negotiate that power structure and then survive there. And particularly Buddha has also given a lot of teachings how to rule a country. And he was a prince before he became a Buddha, and he associated a lot of kings during his time, and a lot of rulers at the time of the Buddha came to see him. So and he has given a lot of teachings that is related to ruling a country. So what he was interested is not necessarily finding an ideal system that governs society, but he's more focusing on individuals. That the ruler, improving the qualities of the ruler was his focus, and then whether the system will function well if the person is good. So he has given these 10 virtues that is required for a ruler, and so you find generosity, morality, altruism, honesty, gentleness, self-discipline, non-anger, non-violence, forbearance, uprightness, and I think I missed one more thing. There are also 7 principles given by the Buddha for a stability of a society. There Buddha discuss about the 7 principles that we can use to improve a society, particularly to help a society not to go down, so I will read these things. The 7 principles of social stability is that society should meet frequently with large numbers, not limited number, large numbers, and they should meet and disperse. They should get together peacefully, discuss peacefully, and disperse peacefully. Or decisions should be made cooperatively. And new rules should not be made hastily, and no existing rules should be abandoned hastily. And elders of the society should be revered, and their advices should be taken into account. Particularly, the 5th one is women should not be abused but be protected. The 6th is religious and national monuments should be protected and maintained. And the last one is religious teachers and thinkers should be given freedom and protected. These are given by the Buddha as 6 principles for social stability. So these are the social relevance that I want to emphasize. Let me see. And then lastly, I want to just to show you a few examples of international organization in the world, the Buddhist-based social welfare associations, because sometimes you may not aware of this thing, as a way of showing how Buddhism has been used for social actions. And so Buddhist Global Relief is a very important organization. Many of you are familiar with Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, who translated most of the early Buddhist teachings to English in recent time, and he started this Buddhist Global Relief, and these days he's having a big project to feed the hunger, providing food for a lot of poor countries. And the Suchi organization based in Taiwan is the most active Buddhist organization. Usually we go for disaster relief events, whenever earthquake or flood or whatever thing, and they are very good in that. And of course, Firefly Mission is based in Singapore, and Shanti Volunteer Association, Japanese association, work mostly in Southeast Asia, and Sarvodaya is an association in Sri Lanka, which is running a lot of grassroots level development program. They have very different idea of development, not necessarily only the material development. They are more on building relationship and using Buddhist ideas. So Sarvodaya is an important social organization. So there are a lot of social actions going on in the world. So this is what I have to share. I have to share with you today. Okay, let's go to our review of the answers. Remember the first question? Somehow the order of the question is reversed when I print. I don't know why. Yeah. So the first question was what is the difference between the approach of Buddhist social action and that of a secular humanistic social action. I think many of you have done a real good job of explaining the difference between Buddhist social action and action plan of a secular humanistic. And I think Nancy has given a very brief, concise answer. So I'm going to read that. And the Buddhism addresses solving social imperfections by teaching benefits of the reduction of greed, hatred, and ignorance. Conversely, the secular humanistic approach is to fulfill material needs of people. So, I mean, the basic difference will be like in humanist and a secular humanist idea of social well-being or progress is based on fulfilling basic needs, of course, and then also fulfilling basic, desires, and providing material and of course in terms of protection too. But I think the Buddhist approach will be a little different from that. Of course, it will take into account fulfilling basic needs, but not simply encouraging always to satisfy desire, but maybe more focusing on helping people to transcend that very desire. So that's the little difference. I think many of you have got that point. I think the Sue has a little different question, a different answer. That says more suggestion that the Buddhist approach will be a little more individual. That people will take into account how we suffer and then try to find a way to go out. And secular humanist approach will be that we come and create policies for you that you will be happy later. So not giving very much chance to suffer themselves, right? But whatever case, there's a little difference of the philosophy. And the second question was how reasonable is it to say that all social ills are derived from psychological roots of greed, hatred, and delusion? I think many have agreed, to that question. Only Alan has some saying that it's a little of overstatement, right? Giving all, saying that all social ills are derived from psychological roots. Of course, there are a lot of social problems that are derived from like social structures, oppression, or maybe social institutions. But we have to ask, who created these structures? Who created these institutions? Again, people. And how they create those things. So there's always inescapable, psychology is not easy to rule out. The last question is, do you see social conditions of the contemporary time that we are living as obstacles for Buddhist social action or as opportunities for such an approach? All has considered this as a great opportunity. So I really hope that you take this seriously and not taking our social condition that we are living in a consumerist society, usually encouraging us to consume as much as possible, the kind of society that always feed our greed and things. But you consider that society, that condition as an opportunity to practice. I think. So I'm glad that you took it as an opportunity. So I hope that you will be serious about that too. Yes. Yeah. So let's take this as an opportunity to overcome, act. Because I think the Su has explained that this capitalism creates problems and inevitable sufferings, and that will help people to make actions, and then maybe find a different way to find our happiness. Okay, now just before we move to open discussion, I just want to explain, comment on a few comments you have made. Dan has made a comment about the idea of perennial Buddhism. Right, Dan? The perennial Buddhism. And because in the article you find the term perennial Buddhism, he said that he is more focusing on perennial Buddhism rather than contextualized Buddhism. I think the Dan question is there perennial Buddhism, or is the whole idea of perennial Buddhism is a Western construct, right? And that's your idea. I think the way he presented, where you use the word perennial, give that impression. I think what you really mean in that context is the core teachings of Buddhism. Like Buddhism travels different parts of the world. It adapts to different cultures, so with different expressions. I think when he talk about Buddhism, he is focusing more on the common denominator of all these Buddhist traditions and core Buddhist teachings. I think what he means by perennial is that maybe like those core teachings reveal something about, reveal some basic fact about our life, right? The Buddha talks about those things in 6th century BC about greed, hatred, and delusion. Our mind are different from those minds that people had in 6th century BC. Maybe we'll become a little more complicated, probably. But there's a common appeal to the human mind, right? So I think that is what he meant. That, do you have any comment about that? I understand that whole word Buddhism was really and I'm really glad that you found exact text where the word Buddhism appears for the first time in 1801.
I forget the name of the publication.
Yeah,
Oriental Studies. Something.
Yeah, and of course in even in traditional countries we call this Dhamma. And there is not even this distinction whether Hindu Dhamma or Buddha Dhamma or whatever, just a Dhamma in most cases. But we call Sasana. In Sasana it's like a dispensation. Yeah, the whole term Buddhism, like very distinctive, exclusive category called Buddhism, was not there in Asian context. It always with a lot of traditions. In Japan with Shintoism, in China, Confucianism, Taoism, and people just take advantages from all these teachings and not necessarily distinguish them as very clearly. Of course, monks and like religious experts will have their own distinction, but common people were quite free from religious affiliations.
I had heard that in China traditionally, Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism were called the three branches, as if they were three different branches of the same.
Oh, the same thing, yeah. They actually more they grow from each other and reflecting from each other. So yeah, definitely, yeah. That's how they viewed those teachings, because there's no exclusive claims in those teachings. Yeah. Okay, another comment was again from Dan. He's asking a question, is social karma a legitimate concept of Buddhism, or it is more of a Western spin to the idea of karma? I think it's a good question, because we find the appearance of social karma in most of the writings in the West. But I should say, though of course the way that the social karma is explained in the text has a Western spin to it. But the idea of a communal karma was already present in many traditional societies. Particularly people explain even meeting of people together like why we are born into one family. And people in traditional Buddhist countries, people explain it as a result of a communal karma. So the idea of idea of a communal karma was already in many other traditional Buddhist countries too. Well before the idea of social karma is used here. So
I'm taking your point into a reference.
you mean
Like what Buddhist thinker may have given some thought to social
it's more of a folk actual people's belief rather than based on a text. But we can also find I think there should be some praise in Visuddhimagga and other commentaries. I mean, I can remember one incident, where the communal karma is explained. There's one incident explained in the Buddhist text in commentaries that a group of monks went for meditation for a journey, and they took shelter in a cave one night. And on that day, suddenly there was a storm or whatever, big thunder appeared, and part of the rock was split. I mean, it was broken, and the big boulder came and actually closed the door of the cave, and all the monks inside died because they couldn't come out. So in explaining this whole incident, the commentator explained, and this thing happened due to a communal karma done by all these group of monks together, and they experienced the result of that, as together. So at least in the commentaries, communal karma is quite present. And particularly, actually, the whole individual. I mean, what happened in when the concept of karma came to Western countries, it got that more individualistic turn. Yeah, but of course, it has the individualistic flavor from the origin too, because it's a volition. So volitional karma is individual karma necessarily, but we can have volition together as a group too. We can influence each other volitions, and we can have a common volition, and then we can act together. And so each individual have their karma, but it also has common factor that we can say as the communal part of it. So it is a kind of legitimate concept, at least in the commentaries. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Now, we can discuss. Yes.
I couldn't help thinking about our gun culture when I was reading that.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it seems like we've gotten to a point where we're just shooting each other, and we created this opportunity for people to have guns as a society.
Oh,
And
so that allow individual
Right.
people to.
And now it's our undoing in many ways. So it seems to me like that's an example of social karma.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And also, as a society, we also create different volition, different like impulsion to act to different things differently as a society. For example, let's say in this culture, maybe if you see a dolphin, right, and you have a special regard for that animal, right, but you may not have that regard when you see a cow, because in India, in many of the Asian countries, when you see a cow, your impulsion, to act is quite different, different from seeing other animals. So you see that how as a society we have different tendencies to treat different things differently and act differently. Yes.
I think on one of the previous slides, the Buddha said the three causes of suffering were greed, hatred, and delusion. Is delusion the same as ignorance?
Yeah, ignorance. But in delusion has a sense of confusion. Yeah, both. It's not really lack of knowledge, but lack of misinformation. I'm sorry, no, not really lack of knowledge, but presence of misinformation, knowing wrongly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
mhm.
People can do things to make a difference for themselves or others, but there's no central plan or grand scheme, as you pointed out.
Maybe in general, like we can make it, yes. Maybe the enlightened beings can make it too.
For even enlightened beings can only do so much.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we're dealing with samsaric reality.
It's
And
like, yeah,
samsara will not. Samsara is kind of a hopeless situation.
it's actually the conditionality. You know, the very existence of anything is based on, you know, conditionality, right? Nothing exists by itself. It's all causes and conditions, you know, work together. So each condition has a role. Each condition is important for the whole. So therefore, the way each condition function changes the whole. So it all depends on, you know, how these, you know, each small conditions function, and to decide what is the picture of the whole. And there's no invisible or outside, you know, design or plan or controller to decide the whole. It is the individual units that make the whole. So each unit is equally responsible to make the whole.
Well, are we not, when we talk about changing these conditions, we're talking about samsaric conditions, are we not?
Yeah, that is
Human
the existence.
condition-
Yeah.
The human condition is a samsaric condition.
Yeah. Any existence is the samsaric level. Yeah.
And is there any Buddhist plan for curing samsara?
I mean, that's the yeah. That's the nobody
For an
for
enlightened being,
yeah.
but for the whole, all society, do you think there's a Buddhist plan for that? That we can...
That's our wish.
We can eradicate samsara?
You mean completely? You mean? Maybe there could be new beings coming. Yeah. But I think that's our wish. That's our whole, you know, effort to do whatever, you know, thing that we can do to move everybody, because everybody has a potential to transcend samsara. Everybody has a potential to become enlightened.
Each person does.
Yeah.
But suffering is a built-in reality.
As long as we have those, you know, greed-headed and delusion, you know, yeah. Yes?
I have a question, Bhante. It's related to what you're talking about. I was reading this book about Buddha in the white cloud.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
So sounds like he was driven by he wants to find a way to liberate human suffering.
Yeah.
So do you think since he has found a way 2,000 years ago that, you know, humanity had? Do you think we suffer less now, like collectively, since he had, you know, found a way, or we're still in the same predicament, or?
Yeah. I think Buddha and many others, you know, have helped us a lot to, you know, overcome our sufferings. And, you know, Buddha is one main, you know, enlightened being among many other, you know, beings who have, you know, somehow helped us to overcome our ignorance, overcome our great hidden delusion. I definitely think that, you know, appearance of the Buddha really made a difference to the world.
You think it has?
Yeah, it has done a big difference. Not only the Buddha, I mean, appearance of any other, you know, enlightened people has really done a big difference. And otherwise, we will not even talking about, you know, and we will talk about it when of course the suffering that we experience because of greed, hate, and delusion somehow, you know, make us to discuss those things, but we may not find a proper solution.
Do you think
So-
the Buddhist countries, do you think people in the Buddhist country that practice Buddhism suffer less than the countries?
Not necessarily, not necessarily, not necessarily. But I can say people who actually, you know, take this teaching seriously, you know, they suffer less. But I think, you know, but maybe a good example would be Bhutan. I mean, Bhutan became, I mean, in the new, what you call new measurements of happiness, right? Instead of GBT, can you help me? Instead of GDP, they have NH, or some-
Gross national happiness.
gross national happiness. And so they tested, people from all over the country, the Western countries, and surprisingly, who came to the first was Bhutan. People had no idea where's Bhutan, and then later then people will, start to find out. So of course, their level of happiness is so high, though their material conditions are not that, great. They don't have high scraping, buildings, but their gross level of happiness is great. So in that case, they are happier because of the Buddhist teachings, but it's not the case in many other countries. But there are groups who follow that.
Bhante, correct me if I'm making this up, but I think I read that the Buddha said that there would never be a lot of Buddhists because it's too hard. Did I make that up, or did I read that?
No, I don't remember exactly such a phrase, but remember, when Buddha was about to start to teach, he had hesitation. Because when he has this, enlightenment experience and he wanted to share with others, he was thinking, will people listen to me?
Yeah.
Because, all people want to satisfy their desires. And that is what actually many philosophies and religions also, what they are really doing is somehow providing a worldview that somehow satisfy our desire for self-existence, desire for eternal life, desire for whatever, so all, as long as those desires are fulfilled, at least in terms of stories or in terms of philosophy, worldview, people will follow them, right? And Buddha's problem is that I'm going to talk about them something that doesn't really go along with their desires, go along with their so I'm going to talk something exactly opposite, and will people listen to me? And then Buddha was hesitant. And then later he realized that there are, but then later he developed the trust that there are people who can understand this. Yeah. So there's a paradox there. Mm. Yeah. When people really realize that what's enlightenment, and nobody will be interested in having it and attaining it, because people are why if I'm going to dissolve, if I'm going to disappear, why I want to have it, So there's a paradox there. So nobody will be interested. In generally, not be interested in attaining enlightenment. But that's the way to end suffering. Yeah.
It's easier to ask some other force, if you will, to be responsible for your happiness than try to work for it yourself, which is what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're saying it's our responsibility,
Yeah.
rather than offering a prayer for someone else to do it for us.
Yeah, that's true. But I just want to add few things to that. That they're saying that we are responsible for our suffering. It's not really, the suffering is not necessarily completely self-caused. It's also not completely other caused. There are many causes and conditions, even contributing to this thing, from external environment and other people. But we are playing a very important role there. So of course our role plus many other conditions make suffering possible. Make suffering happen. But because we have a role there, changing of our role, though there are other conditions, changing our role can actually change the outcome of the situation. So of course we have a responsibility, but we have to get rid of that idea of that we are solely responsible for everything, or solely responsible for suffering. We have a responsible part that we play, but there are many, the impermanence, and then other people's tendencies, other people's reactions and responses, and all things contribute to that.
But even for people who are Buddhist, such as China, right? People who claim to be Buddhists, they don't practice the way we practice here.
Definitely.
They don't meditate. They just put a Buddha statue and say, "Give me money, make my business." That's how they You know, it's still, it's like they pray to a god, almost like.
Is that your experience?
That's what I observed in China, yeah, that's what's going on in China.
But China is a different case, you know, because China lost Buddhist tradition for few decades, you know, and then now they are, you know, getting it back. And maybe if you go to Taiwan and, you know, other countries, you may get, you know, how Buddhist tradition was followed. But she is correct, and even in traditional Buddhist countries, we have that tendency. So as you say, you know, when teachings are given to transcend desires, and, you know, people still have desires, so they may follow it. But in the side part, they will also do certain things that satisfy their desire. I mean, even though they are not really satisfying, but somehow, you know, somehow appealing to their desires. Whether it is happening or not is a different matter, but just praying to have a good job, you know, praying to have, you know, to have whatever prosperity, at least, you know, gives some kind of temporary release, you know, for certain people. So, and of course, that's a human condition. So even, you know, many Buddhist countries, and, you know, of course, when they come to really teaching, they understand that, okay, this is not the way to do it, you know, but, you know, but they have incorporated, you know, many other practices, but they are not the center. They are in the peripheries. So in the center, they will work towards, you know, transcending, you know, changing, transforming their personality. But on the sides, they have all kinds of, you know, magical things that they use. At least, you know, find some temporary relief. Okay, do you have any more questions?
I'll ask one that's kind of
Yeah.
out in left field.
Okay.
Is the Dalai Lama supposed to be the reincarnation of the original Buddha?
No.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Because I was going to say, if he was enlightened, then he wasn't supposed to be reincarnated, so I was curious.
Yeah.
Okay, but he's the 16th, or...
I mean, 16th Dalai Lama, not 16th Buddha.
Okay.
16th Dalai Lama. I mean, the same Dalai Lama is, I mean, that's how they explain the same Dalai Lama is being recognized again and again and put back to the position. So, I mean, they will do to not only that to Dalai Lama, there are many other positions that they will do the same. You know, when the teacher died, then they will, you know, wait and they will look for the next incarnation, and they will bring, they will bring back and situate him in the same position. So, it's not the Buddha.
The Dalai Lama is, a tradition holds that he's a reincarnation of a certain bodhisattva of compassion. And I think my understanding of it is that he's the 14th in the line, but only the fifth Dalai Lama was the first historical person to be recognized as the spiritual and temporal leader of Tibet. The first four were sort of retroactively recognized as the Dalai Lama. They were local chieftains. So it's a pretty complex institution.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, Lily first and then
Yeah.
Eddie.
Well, we're on the subject. So, like, what is, you know, the Buddhist community view Dalai Lama? My point of view, I don't think he's enlightened.
So you mean, say again? I mean,
How do you perceive Dalai Lama?
well, I mean, you're asking my personal.
I think he's, to me, I think he's a pop cultural figure. From my research, I think he's not enlightened. I have seen how when he was in Tibet, how the slaves were, you know, treated horribly. I don't think the enlightened person would allow that to happen.
But I mean, I do not have a close, you know, association to make, any comments about him. But I have seen him, and I have read what he has written, and I have seen how I have seen, at least in distance, how he interacts with others. So I do see a spiritual, you know, some kind of evolution in him. But in order to say somebody is enlightened, you really have to deal with that person. And so since I have,
just based on what he had done in the past.
Yeah, I don't know, but I personally appreciate him. I personally respect him and honor him, and because I mean we need, you know, good human beings, you know. So Yeah, but I can't make any claim on that. Yeah, Eric, yes.
Yeah, the question I wanted to ask might have a long answer, and I didn't want to do that to you.
Yeah.
I wanted you to try to keep it as basic as possible you could.
Yeah.
But there's different sects of Buddhism: Mahayana, Vishvana, Theravada.
Yeah.
And what the basic thing that makes those different from each other? What is it?
You're asking what's the basic thing that makes them different?
I
or
know
make
all
them-
the things that brings them together, probably, but what?
Yeah,
what, a couple of
what
things
you
are
learned
different
so
about
far, what you learn in our Introduction to Buddhism course
it?
is what unites all these traditions. So if you go to any tradition, this is the basic.
Mhm.
Yeah. And what so we have Theravada, which is people call it oldest, but practice in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, and then we have Mahayana, practice in Taiwan, Korea, Japan, China, and then what we call Vajrayana, practice in Tibet, Mongolia, Bhutan, many other countries. So actually, the way that Buddhist tradition evolved is not necessarily in opposition to each other. Actually, the Mahayana means Theravada plus. So if you go to Mahayana tradition, you find what you find in Theravada, and moreover you find many other deities, bodhisattvas, many other celestial Buddhas in other cosmic realms, and so you have this, this historical Buddha too, and plus you have many other Buddhas. So if you want more little complex, more elaborated, you can go. So Mahayana is Theravada plus, okay, and Vajrayana is Mahayana plus. Because what really happened in Vajrayana, they really, based on all Mahayana teachings, but they have special techniques, what they call Tantra. Special techniques, meditation techniques, that they think that by using those techniques, instead of following the gradual path, we can make a dramatic change in our consciousness, and then using those special, techniques, we can achieve the enlightenment quite quickly. And they have quite number of techniques, but they are only revealed after you progress you progress in a spiritual practice. But that is the difference in Vajrayana. I'm making very simplified.
Yeah,
Okay?
and I appreciate it.
But much more than that. Of course, the main difference will be from Theravada to Mahayana. In the Mahayana Buddhism, there's a concept of bodhisattva, like the highly spiritually evolved beings who are in the verge of becoming fully enlightened, purposely delay the enlightenment and stay in the world in order to help others to become enlightened. So that is the Mahayana idea. So that is one difference, the bodhisattvas.
I have a question on that real quick. How common is the last one that starts at the B?
Vajrayana?
Yeah,
Or
because
Tibet, I think the most popular form of Buddhism in US
yes, because I
should
think
be
that
either Zen or like Vajrayana.
because I would think that what you just said, that instant gratification, that connection between whatever you talk, the tantra,
Yeah.
and the sort of magical happening,
Yeah.
whereas what we've learned here,
Yeah.
it's a gradual, incremental type
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a drug addict. You don't see drug addicts taking like antidepressants to get high, because you have to wait for like 3 weeks before those things kick in. Whereas you take a hit of heroin, so in comparing heroin with and opiates with the Buddhist sects that you mentioned, I would think that the one that creates the instant gratification would be the one that would be most popular. And I would just most popular here because of that, because of the way our culture is aligned.
It's not really instant gratification. They are quite serious about that using those techniques. They will only reveal those techniques.
Okay. I didn't understand
yeah,
that.
It's done in a very controlled, very disciplined,
Okay.
context. And also it's more like it has a depth to it actually. I'm not trained in that tradition, but I have read those texts, and I have appreciation for those techniques too, because they are actually dealing with duality. and giving certain practices that help us to go beyond duality. Like usually we think in terms of duality, either and those techniques helping us to somehow help our mind to go beyond duality. So I have some appreciation of those techniques. I don't know whether they really make you fully enlightened, but I have appreciation. But I think the reason that it became quite popular in the US, I don't know, maybe something to do with what you said, but mostly, I think the Tibetan monks were able to come to US quite early, and then because when they don't like to stay in their country, and they start to travel, and US was one of the countries that accept them and receive them, and then that also helped that form of Buddhism to travel. I think the first form of Buddhism that was popular in the US was Zen Buddhism, and you know about Zen more than Japanese.
I don't know if it's which one out of all the stuff that all the sects we just talked about, which is the oldest?
Oldest? Of course.
If you could say, I don't know.
Initially there were no such sects. Of course, in Theravada, Theravada is called the elders. You can call it Theravada, but before Mahayana, I think I can give an answer. Because even before the whole Mahayana movement, like whole bodhisattvas and compassionate and bodhisattvas, that idea was developed. Even before that, there were divisions in the monastic community, not necessarily among the lay followers. Monastic community, particularly, is based on geographical areas. And monks have traveled to different areas and then you have to attend to that needs of that local needs. So even the very name of those initial sects refer to the region, and sometimes refer to the teacher. So there were a small division, and Theravada was one of those let's say sects. We cannot say it's sects because not really confronting, but more of a different lineage.
School.
I can say school or lineage. So Theravada was one of the pre-Mahayana lineage that were managed to survive until today. There were other many lineages. Sarvastivada was one, and many other, and they did not survive. And the Mahayana came. The Mahayana movement came when those small groups and lineages was functioning. So definitely, as being one of 18 different lineages, and we can say Theravada was the oldest.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to point out that Vajrayana, theoretically, you can attain enlightenment in one lifetime, but you can also attain hell realms very quickly. There's risks to the path. And the other thing I want to say is that we have discussed, you and I have talked about the fact that there is inside the Theravadan tradition, there's some Vajrayana activities or practices. Can you say anything about that?
What do you mean by that?
There are Theravadins who have Vajrayana practice.
Of course, in Buddhist tradition, if you find anything useful in any other tradition, we will quickly adapt it. There's no prohibition to do that. So of course, it's possible completely, to follow each other practice, because it's like if it is helping to relieve suffering, of course we will use it. But are you referring to particular specific practice that we do? Like I chant Om Mani Padme Hum, and that is a Vajrayana chant. I like the meaning, I like the rhythm. I have find that it's helpful for many people, so I do it. But do you?
Well, there's Vajrayana in Theravada. They became contaminated, I guess.
What do you mean contaminated?
These
I got what you mean by that. In Theravada tradition, yes, we have a tradition of using the words of the Buddha as a way of blessing. So we call parita chanting. We use the sermons of the Buddha like sutras but we chant those sutras as protective, what you call, like charms, not really charms, but we chant those very discourses as a way of, wishing blessings to other people. So the Parita chant could be, the kind of, the Vajrayanis type of adaptation, but it could have been developed within Theravada itself. Yeah. But those traditions, grow from each other, influence each other differently. Yeah, it's entirely possible to have, and very distinction is again very distinction of different traditions is little blur. They were different when they are geographically completely different from each other. But even those days there were travelers and they adapted text and they exchanged texts and practices most of the time. But now, of course, the geographical distance is not a matter anymore. So it's very possible that we share many practices, and there's no problem for it. Yes.
If we're asking general questions, I have one for you. As we know, the culture influences the religion or the philosophy and vice versa. And how do you see Western Buddhism evolving, and how does it look different from, I know most of how we've developed Buddhism is from Asians who have come here and brought Buddhism with them, but our culture, which is so steeped in a Judeo-Christian influence, is going to change that Buddhism somehow. It's going to look like a different branch eventually, because I think it's growing.
Yeah, definitely.
But it has to look different.
Yeah.
Because we aren't.
That's true. I think Buddhism grew all the while, if you go to, like as you said, when Buddhism confront Confucianism and Taoism, and it really had to respond, and in the very responding to that, and it took a different shape. The Buddhism that happened to evolve in 20th century, not in only the Western countries, but in Asia too. When Buddhism had to confront modernity, what we call with Western colonizations and the coming of Western technology and the worldview, the scientific worldview came with it, really influenced how Buddhism was perceived and how Buddhism is practiced. And so not only in the Western countries, in Asia itself, the shape of Buddhism changed because of this confrontation. And my research is around that theme. So when Western countries receive Buddhism, it has already been, Buddhism has already responded to those modern ideas. So it has changed in Asia itself, though they have some traditional elements still. And of course, after coming to the US, and it's continued to evolve, and we see here the whole idea of mindfulness. And so what's really happening first is that that the whatever suitable to Western culture will be chosen from available resources, and those things will be highlighted, those things will be developed. So that really will change the nature of Buddhism. But the role of tradition, Buddhists like us and as monks is to balance that. And that's the first initial response will be choosing what is suitable for that culture. And then our role, nothing is predetermined, right? So this is what we are doing. Here we try to balance it. We try to bring what is really there, not only choosing certain aspect, but giving you the full package, so to speak. I think definitely there will be a different shape to Western Buddhism, and it's okay. It happened in Japan, it happened in China, it happened in other parts of Asia. But what we really want to do is make it more useful, and not really, not really subsume in the consumerist culture, but helping that culture to transform. So I think let's see what's going to happen. Our effort is to not to become the victim, but to somehow contribute to the transformation of both Western society and also Buddhism too. Because even in traditional Buddhism, the many good aspects of taking being diminished, and depending on certain cultures. So now all those good things can come out, and we can, help those things to bring out.
Well, if we truly believe in impermanence, we have to accept the fact that it's a dynamic,
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, Western Buddhism is still in the making, and so I'm just hoping that one day there'll be Buddha statue with the Western look. And that day I admit that okay, Buddhism has reached in the West.
Pair of jeans on, maybe?
Button-down shirt and khakis.
No, the robe will be there.
And some
Because
clogs.
in Japan we have Japanese, look. Because in Buddhist statues were made not to represent the historical Buddha. Buddhist statues was made 100 years after Buddha passed away. And what they were trying to do is to emulate the virtues of the Buddha. So not to really recreate the historical face of the Buddha, but to emulate or to symbolize or to symbolize different virtues of the Buddha: compassion, equanimity, peace. So in different cultures, they try to use the gestures and postures and facial expression to represent that virtue. So in like what we have here is like tranquility, and there are other like wisdom, and then equanimity. So in different cultures, virtues are expressed differently. So different statues were developed in different cultures. So I'm quite okay to have a Western, the statue with a Western look. Yes, yeah. I think
Have you ever heard of Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism?
Who?
Nichiren.
Nichiren, yes.
In Houston, we would go to that temple,
Mm.
and they didn't have a
Buddhist
Buddha. It was
yeah.
a Gohonzon that you chanted to.
Yeah, it's a sutra. Yeah, Lotus Sutra.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
And
so
that was completely different
different.
than this.
Yeah, Japanese Buddhism is so diverse, and Nichiren school is a quite different school. But good thing is that they actually go back to the teachings, and then they based on Lotus Sutra, and that itself is a good practice. But if you only simply chant the name without reading it, that's a different thing.
Right. Well, we do have the books.
Yeah. Okay, I think our time is up because we have another thing too. This is the last class that we had in our course, and this is a pilot course. This is our experiment, and I'm really grateful that you came and took this course. So we'd like you to invite to give us feedback about our course. So it doesn't matter whether you receive a certificate or not. What we really wanted is learning, particularly social learning. So I think we got that benefit. We just want to appreciate your commitment to come here. So since we had that, principle in the beginning that we only give certificates to those people who come for all 6 weeks. So our rule worked at least, 8 people came for all meetings. But even though other people, whoever they came whenever it is possible. So that was a contribution, and that was helpful. So again, I thank everybody, to Dr. Ananda Gunavardhana for organizing and preparing everything, and also Mr. Damita Karamatne and Padma Karavat for coming all the way from State College to help us and videotape and then post in the salon so later people even can go back and see. And also to our both resident monks and for helping us arranging that. Bhante Purna conducted a very important lesson for all of us, and I also discussed with him before I teach you. So it has been helpful, and Bhante Soma prepare everything, in the class. When you come to the class, everything is ready because he's preparing everything. So everybody, contributed, and this is, as Dr. Ananda says, a social learning together. So please receive this certificate, and this is simply a token of appreciation of your commitment to come here. So I will read your name, and please come and take the certificate. Bhante, can you read? See you.
Same story.
And before that, I also appreciate your comments, because your comments and your answering to questions was really helpful. You took time, and I really appreciate everybody who made the comments. And Bante, Gordon, so many. We also discussed your comments, and I understand how you interpret things. So, and we will keep those comments, and we not delete them. I have made different files, so it will really help us to learn, help us to think different way, even the family thing that we know. So really appreciate. So, okay, Eric Seeger, give an applause. Oh, no, yes. Yeah. Nancy Hall. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. Alan Roback. Is that
Very good.
Sam Ellison. Marcel Macmillan. Annalisa Summers. Dan Hetherington. Craig Hartman. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much.
Signed in.
Signed good.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much again, and hope to see you in our next class. We don't know what it is. Yeah, if Bante Purna is ready to do that, we will help. We will prepare. That's our next plan, to arrange a course on one topic in that course. Thank you, and have some refreshments before you go.